Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It's the off season. It is so sad to say that, but here we are in the off season. How you hanging on there, Rob?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Brian, because it's been a great week just to see the response to the awards polling that we've been putting out there. You know, people turned out in their, I was going to say thousands, but people turned out. People definitely turned out. We've had a good response. So today will be a bit of news, a quick saunter through the season that was 2024. I wouldn't say it's an in-depth season review. We'll probably save that for the new year, get some guests on and do a look back. But me and Brian are just going to kind of go through and pull out our favourite memories of the season. Then Brian's got a Sap That Season 24 edition. And then we have our awards. And we're not on video for you guys. You're hearing this. But just imagine that we're both wearing really, really expensive tuxedos surrounded by glitter balls and award ceremony regalia, because that's exactly what we're doing.
That's
I'm not
exactly
in a
what we're
hotel
wearing.
in Boston.
Yeah, 100% that's what we're wearing. And I got to say, for anyone who heard the episode a couple weeks ago with Sean Kelly, virtual statistician for F1, I do have one stat in there that is completely pointless, useless, and matters to nobody, which he said you don't want to use too many of those. Well, I'm using one, Sean, so for everyone who's curious, buckle up. We'll get there soon enough.
Okay, cool. Let's jump in then. It's the off season, so there wasn't really any huge news. A couple of, there's a sad story in here, but we'll pick out what we found. So, VCARB relented after everybody saying, "What does the RB mean? Is it Red Bull? Is it Racing Bulls? What does the RB mean?" And they just said it's just RB. No one ever wanted to say what it was. Well, now they've officially renamed for next year that it will be Visa Cash App Racing Bulls Formula One Team. So they're saying the RB is Racing Bulls, and that will be absolutely fantastic because everyone still will call them Toro Rosso.
Exactly. And Zach Brown can still keep saying this.
AlphaTauri or VCARB or their name of the week looks like they're certainly competitive.
Name of the week. So yeah, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. We've covered this a couple times in the off seasons of the past. When drivers score points, they have to pay more for their super license, and they have to maintain a super license to race in F1. The more points you have, the more expensive your super license becomes. Max, who won this year with less points than the last couple years, owes €1 million as his fee for being allowed to race again next season. $1 million. I mean, that is a lot of money because he was good. Lando in second, who came in second, it's like €875,000. Charles right behind him, and then it kind of filters down based on, obviously, how well you did. Down to Pierre, we'll highlight in 10th. By the way, don't forget Pierre Gasly finished 10th in the Drivers' Championship after the car was so bad it couldn't make it around some of the laps to start the season. He's got €100,000. So that's a lot of money for the privilege to go back out and make $75 million.
There's like, I hate to say this, but Valtteri, Logan, all those guys, they get a refund.
Especially if you're not on the grid next year, do you get the opportunity to get some money back?
Then there was a story that, oh my gosh, I mean, it's great. So we're going to go through it because it's just one of those freaky moments. But I must have seen about 1 million different flavors of this post. Lots of people putting together different varieties of the image to go with it, which was great because people loved it and they jumped on board. But me and Brian saw it first on the Discord where Lee posted it. So we'll take his graphic, which is it's Hamilton's last race with McLaren and then Hamilton's last race with Mercedes. You pasted this in here. Do you want to take us through this?
I love
Brian?
this.
I know
love
you
this.
do.
This is like the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. There's something that there's a similar version of that, but it's amazing because in 2012, Hamilton's last race with McLaren was in Brazil. A Red Bull, multiple world champion, spun on the opening lap and recovered to finish P6. That was obviously Seb. In 2024, Abu Dhabi, Hamilton's last race with Mercedes now, a Red Bull, multiple-time world champion, spun on the opening lap and recovered to finish, you got it, P6. And
That is
this
an
time,
amazing
it's
stat. I can't
Verstappen.
believe that. I can't believe that happened. What a coincidence. Right. Moving on. Oh, no, no, no. Tell us more,
There's
Brian.
more. You think that's it? Perez retired on the opening lap, and once again, Perez retired on the opening lap. I love the fact that it's Checo twice.
Yes.
Retired on the opening lap. A British driver secured victory for McLaren in 2012. It was Jenson Button. In 2024, as we obviously remember from last week, it was Lando Norris. A Spanish driver took second place in a Ferrari in both of these instances. In 2012, it was Fernando Alonso. This time it was obviously Carlos Sainz. And then finally, the other Ferrari completed the podium. In 2012 was Felipe Massa, and in 2024 it was Charles Leclerc. I think those are amazing sort of, I don't know, sort of the way they align across 12-year differences of the last race for Lewis at McLaren and then Mercedes. And like Rob said, Lee posted this on the Discord. Just tremendous statistic.
It was amazing. I love coincidences like that. Absolutely nothing to it, but fascinating
Right,
nonetheless.
means nothing. It's just kind of cool.
Something else that means nothing. Oh my, can't believe this one's gaining traction. It's now even on the official.
Talked about this. This is nuts.
We did. And I know I've got a little bit more that I found over the week because we didn't mention this last week. But even the F1 account posted that Gasly became the first driver ever to cause no crash damage. It's like, what? So we last week said, look, even if you're not 100% to blame, if you've got your foot to the floor when the rev counter goes through the roof and the engine blows up, even if it's because you're being pulled forwards by some amazing slipstream ahead of you and it caused the engine to over rev, you're still kind of in control of it. You probably see the rev counter and maybe you could have lifted off a little bit so it didn't blow up. So we were kind of saying, look, his engine blew up. How can you say none of that's on him?
Right.
Well, Terry, aka the Coffee Corner, said, hang on a minute. In Japan, he damaged his floor and had to have a new floor installed. And the people are so desperate to cling to this he didn't cause any damage cost story. They say, aha, but they didn't have to build him a new floor because Ocon was taking an upgrade, so they gave Ocon's old floor to Gasly. So therefore, ergo, no new floor was built, so he didn't cause any crash damage. So there was no labour involved in fitting the new floor. No new nuts and bolts were used to secure that because we already know that, kind of once Paul's told us, once something's been on a car, it tends to get thrown away. So come on, why is everybody so desperate?
I don't know.
To say that. Anyway, I'm not giving it any more airtime.
That's enough. It was the idea that he didn't have a crash is at least cool enough. Can we leave it at that and not try to get super, precise and then be wrong?
Then if you went through the history of F1, I'm sure there's drivers that have gone entire seasons without a crash. So It's not special. Anyway, moving on.
Well, there was some Valtteri news and not a lot of it great. And obviously, for anyone who may not have listened, Valtteri Bottas, friend of the show.
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
It wouldn't be a season recap if I didn't get that in there somewhere. So first off, when he locked up and ran into K-Mag at Abu Dhabi last week, he received, I think, 3 penalty points. I'm going off memory because Rob deleted all my pictures here. But the bigger news is he got a 5-place grid penalty for his next race. Valtteri doesn't appear to have, and Paul will fill us in more when he comes on in the new year, doesn't appear to have a drive for next year, at least not in the main driver. There's obviously rumors of the Mercedes reserve seat. We'll find out. But that puts him in good company with Robert Schwartzman, because we've covered this stat before, and Jenson Button, who all are sitting on 5-place grid penalties for their next race in F1 who don't currently have a drive. So then, you're like, oh, that stinks. That's not the way you want it to go. And then all of these sort of sour grapes stories came out where they interviewed him and they said, did this turn out the way you wanted? And he's like, no, if I could go back 3 years ago, I wouldn't have done this. It was a mistake to join Sauber. And then later that week, a story came out where he said he was promised to be the pillar of the Audi project, which swayed him to join Sauber. And then obviously he's not the pillar of the Audi project.
That's the...
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. That's the bit that just... I don't know, maybe should he have had more about him and got that in writing or something contractually? But, that's just not on. You take a big name driver like Valtteri and say, look, come join us, be part of the project, be here to build the future, get everything ready and then be part of the Audi adventure. Oh, yeah, great, I'm in. Okay, we're announcing our Audi drivers and Valtteri's sitting there thinking, it's me and who? Oh, who's it going to be me? It's Nico Hülkenberg. He's like, so that's the experienced driver they're going with. It just...
Yeah, and then insult to injury, he's in California with his girlfriend, his partner Tiffany, and he gets pulled over by the police. And there's a pretty funny video of them getting a ticket, bollocksed by the Rozzers, as you might say.
He used the "What's next" meme though quite well in the in that video. So he's always does it with a smile on his face. Then a bit of kind of just sad news, although I couldn't work out from the story if he's fought this off or not. But Eddie Jordan said he was diagnosed with quite aggressive form of cancer early in the year. bladder and prostate cancer, which spread to his spine and pelvis. He was telling David Coulthard on the Formula 4 Success podcast he's on. So he's just using it as a kind of a platform to say, come on, fellas, go get tested. Don't be shy. Don't be ashamed of anything. Just go get tested. But nothing in the story kind of made out whether it was like, there's a couple of lines in there that made it sound like it was behind him, but I'm not sure people usually put this type of aggressive stuff behind them. So I wish him all the best.
Yeah, definitely.
And just echo the thing of, yes, especially as you get a little older in life, important to go and get yourself checked out on a regular basis. That's all I would say. Then we had Rwanda, which I think is where the FIA gala was at, wasn't it?
Yeah, the prize giving was there,
okay,
yes.
the prize giving one.
I haven't seen it yet because it's 3 hours long. I got to carve out a little time.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
it
going to
was.
bother. I like seeing the headlines of who won what. Before I get onto the Rwanda thing, what drives me nuts, and yes, here comes a Rob's rant,
Oh,
is
geez. This early in the episode?
yes, in any other sport, I think, in the world, let's go. I won't go to my go-to. I won't go to my football. I go to American football. If you won the Super Bowl, and at the end of it, they went, yes, and join us in a month's time where we're going to have a gala where we're going to hand out the Super Bowl trophy to the winning team. You'd all be sat in the stadium going, what you on about? They just won it. In the World Cup, Messi wasn't made to wait a month to lift the World Cup. No other sport just doesn't ever let the moment of celebration of handing out the trophy, like we have the podium, we give a trophy to the winner. You couldn't do a special one in the race where Max won the title. I hate this. Wait a month and then do it at the gala in black tie event. It's stupid.
If we thought the Gasly news was a nothing burger, can I just say this is too, and I don't really care one way or the other. Just bring back drunk Kimi Räikkönen. That's all I need. Bring back drunk Kimi Räikkönen.
I say bin off the gala, or if you do, we don't need to see it, and just let's give the trophy out when they actually win the World Championship so they can celebrate it. He didn't even look. He walked up, took the trophy, waved, picture for the camera, and what the picture? In a tuxedo, not in a race suit. It's stupid. Anyway, Rwanda then also formally announced their bid for a race in the future, and the track designer is none other than Alexander Wirtz, the Formula F1 driver and chairman of the Grand Prix Drivers Association. I did not know he designs tracks.
I didn't either.
Or maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And then a news we'd reported on the rumors before it hadn't been official. Cadillac will use Ferrari engines when they enter F1 in 26 until their own engines are ready in what they say will be 28. And then the Campos F2 team has announced their driver lineup for next year, and Oscar Hajar is not... Oscar? I'm going off memory here, and I think I may have been
Is
messed
it
that
Isaac?
up. Isaac. It is Isaac. It starts with
It
a
is
vowel.
Isaac,
I knew it was a
isn't it?
vowel. I just got my vowels all wrong. I had a vowel.
Not James Vowles, though.
A little vowel movement there. And so...
Ooh.
And then we have Isaac Hajar not on the team. So we would assume he will end up in Red Bull next year. And you have to... Or at least a Red Bull family car. And so it becomes a question of, will it be Yuki, Isaac, or Liam? And I'm putting my money on Liam to take Checo's seat, and then you have the other two at the Visa Cash App, Toro Rosso, Minardi, AlphaTauri, Racing Bull, Beep team, right?
Yeah, and they measure weeks differently at Red Bull as well, because allegedly there was going to be an update on Checo's future
Next
at the
week.
end of the week. Now, unless I suppose we are at the weekend, so technically it could still come out, but I doubt we're going to get a big breaking news on Saturday or Sunday. So,
I don't think so.
Anywho, so that was the news. So let's get in our DeLorean, set the time codes for the beginning of the season and hit 88 miles an hour and go back to Bahrain. What we're going to kind of do is just break the season nicely breaks into 4 groups of 6 races. So we're going to take a walk down memory lane for those 6 races and then just give an update of how did the 2 championships stand at that point. So all the way back, I was looking at our review of Bahrain, and we actually did a groundhog race kind of meme for it because it was Max dominating with Checo second. I mean, we were all hoping for a closer championship, and we arrived on the first race of the season and went, I've seen this movie before.
Was this the point where I was threatening to turn this into a pickleball podcast?
It was either this one or
The next
maybe
one.
after Saudi or the because we kind of got, well, let's just, we went on to Saudi, and again we had an RB12 again. I think you went all pickleball on us, and the only redeeming factor of kind of that race was, do you remember K-Mag's Ministry of Defence when he'd been hit with about 3,000 penalties, so he just kind of like slowed right down and just held the K-Mag train to give Hulkenberg the chance to get a whole pit lane stop in front of him.
It was actually, I mean, when you think of the Jeddah track and how high speed it is, and how hard it is to overtake in some of those corners. He was brilliant in slowing down into the corner and then accelerating slowly out of the corner with no risk of being overtaken himself, but adding a second a lap on some of those laps and created a nice space, like you said, for Hulk to get that pit window in. That was awesome. I mean, that was a really well done job by Kevin.
It was mastering the dark arts. There were a lot of people that didn't like it, but it's like, well, if you don't like it, overtake him. Oh no, you can't, because he's a Jedi Master with his defense. We also had Behrman was in the Ferrari and came 7th because Sainz had just been sliced open to have his appendix removed. So everybody thought, well, that's going to be him out for a while because that's surgery, right? It's going to be painful. It's going to be sore. You don't just come straight back in Australia and win the race, do you, Brian?
Well, he did. And you remember the video of him walking around in the paddock so very gingerly, and you're thinking, why would they allow him to get into an F1 car if he can barely walk from the turnstile where you swipe your badge to the hospitality? But he did, and he won. Max retired, if you remember the famous brake explosion from the back right.
Flames coming out of it, wasn't it?
The right side of the car left as you looked at it. As he was coming into the pits, it just boom. And you're like, well, that's probably a retirement. Yeah, and that was fascinating. Like you said, so Sainz won, and every other team out there except Albon wanted to see if they could have their appendices removed, but Alex already had, so he was on the short end of that. And then we went to Japan, and we had a Red Bull 1-2. And as we put the notes together, Rob did a great job saying, yeah, it was actually Checo in second. Don't forget about it. It was just, I love Suzuka. I love the track, and it was a lot of. It's always fun to go back there, but it's been moving around in the calendar a lot, and so it's early this year. It
was early, and this is the one where I went ridiculously optimistic, looking for anything to cling to, that we weren't going to have a Red Bull dominated season. And I think you came with me, so I'm going to say that we called it collectively on the dirty side.
Yeah, definitely. I probably did.
We said that the last race, Ferrari were 44 seconds behind the Red Bull's Delta. Here, they finished 21 seconds behind. So it was like, ooh, in just one season, they've halved the deficit at Suzuka. So are the fields starting to catch Red Bull here? And we maybe went a little bit too overboard of calling it, but we called it. We called it in Japan that the rest of the team seemed to be closing up. We were looking back at the Deltas. We were desperately clutching at straws to say that this year was going to be a good season, because here we are kind of 4 races in, and it's all looking the same way. China, Max wins again. But now Lando sneaks himself in between the 2 Red Bulls. It's like, hello, Mr. McLaren, you have some pace, do you?
And I know we differ on the track in China, and I may be going to Shanghai by myself. That's fine. I like it a lot. And the Joe moment at the end where they put him out on the grid with the top 3 with his own little sign, and the fans got to appreciate their Chinese driver in front of the Chinese fans was awesome. I'm all for that.
First ever, well, he is the first Chinese F1 driver, isn't he? So it's the first ever F1 driver to race in China. So it was a nice moment. I'm just so glad he didn't bin it after 4 laps or something. Because what would they have done? Just pushed his wreck out and make him stand by it.
Have him come out and wave, holding onto the front wing. He's just carrying the front wing under his arm.
And then last and definitely by no means least of the first 6, the first quarter of the season, it was Miami. And it actually served up a decent race, but more than serving up a decent race, it served up a huge slice of hope pie to the rest of the grid as Lando came in and took victory. Didn't need a Max retirement. Nothing against Sainz winning in Australia, but it needed Max's brakes to catch on fire. And here we had Lando's first ever win in F1.
To be fair, Max did run over that bollard in that back corner before the home straight. Not the home straight, but the back straight, and it messed up his wing, and he had to come in and do a couple changes, and he was never quite the same.
That's his fault as opposed to just the brakes.
I know. But it was awesome. Lando's first win in F1. We had Oscar and Carlos battling like crazy throughout the entire race, and at one point,
I looked at
when Lando was in front, I remember the McLaren message to Oscar's like, Please back off. We don't need a safety car at this point.
Yes. And I went back and looked at our notes from it, and both of us are going, for about the last 10 laps, I don't think we breathed. We were like, I don't think I've drawn breath for 10 laps. I'm just holding my breath watching this, just waiting to see if something's going to fall off Lando's car and deny him his first win. Where was it when he almost had his win and he spun out?
Oh, it was Russia in the rain.
Russia. That's yeah.
Russia in the rain. Yeah, he had that thing in the bag, and then he wouldn't come in for inters, and then he was, as you like to say, Bambi on ice. But through the first quarter of the season, at this point, Max 136, obviously having to retire in Australia cost him a bunch of points. Interestingly, at this point, the second place driver is none other than
Sergio Checo Perez!
with 103. So Checo's in second after the first quarter of the season.
Yeah,
That's not going to be the case when it finishes, is it?
No. I was to say, looking back at this first quarter, you're like, well, he's doing what he's expected here. He's about a race win behind in points, but solid number 2. Okay, 5 points. Yeah, there we go. I knew you'd like that one.
I'm 5 years
better than
old.
being a liquid number 2. Anyway, Charles on 98,
That's
Carlos on 83, Lando on 83. So combining good teamwork there. Red Bull, as we were fearing, dominating 239 to Ferrari's 187, McLaren 124, Merc 64, Aston Martin even 42, Toro Rosso 19, Haas 7, Alpine 1, and Williams and Sauber with nothing.
All right, so we turn to the second quarter, races 7 through 12, and we go to Imola. Not one of my favorite tracks. I feel bad saying that.
It wasn't a great. I was looking at it, not a
bad
lot
race.
happened. The fact that the only notes I pulled together was Max wins from Lando and Charles, and the big other thing was Albon got released from the pit with his wheel not on properly and had to kind of drive around hoping the wheel wouldn't set free. And that was kind of it.
Well, speaking of bad races, then we went to Monaco.
Oh my God.
And on the opening lap, first of all, the Haas's had the wrong wings and quali, and I had both Haas boys in my fantasy team. We'll get to fantasy later. So I'm watching this. I'm like, well, that was a bad start, and to the weekend. And then they go into the race, and then they get tangled up, both of them, with Checo on the way up after Saint-Avold. They're going up the hill, climbing up towards Casino Square, and they all get into a massive accident. Everybody was okay, thankfully, but because of that and the red flag and the time it took, now we didn't even have pit stop drama, strategy drama. But the redeeming quality of the race was Charles won. He won his home Grand Prix. The tears of joy on his face were epic. I, as a fan of F1 and a fan of Charles, I loved it, and it was great. Boring race. It actually this is Max's audio from the race where he finished 6th.
This is boring. Should have brought my pillow.
Should have brought my pillow. Yes,
It was an awful. And if there is any example or evidence you want to put forward to the jury to say why the red flag rule needs revisiting to maybe not allow tyre swaps, I present Exhibit A, Monaco, Your Honour.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Terrible.
I do think there's something there. Unless you can show you have damage, you shouldn't be able to get a free swap.
Unless releasing you back out on track would be dangerous.
Right.
Then I think only things that would contravene. If you were going to be let back out on track, and that would give you the black and white flag?
Yep.
If you were in a state where you would get
or the
flagged,
meatball flag.
That's it, the meatball flag. If you're in a situation where you were going to get flagged, then you should be allowed to correct it. But nothing else should be allowed.
Like for like they do now. Have the F1 watch, but that's the only time you should be able to do it. Then we went to Canada. And can I say this? In 24 Canada, there was no Rob and Brian. In 23 Canada, there was Rob and Brian. And in 25 Canada, Rob and Brian. So we're back, baby. This is a Rob and Brian attended sandwich. Just kidding. It's the we didn't attend sandwich. You name it after the meat. 24. So Haas 1-2 on the cards because they went out on full wets. And we were all so excited, and they went through the field, sliced through like a knife for the first, I'm making this up, 8 laps or so.
It was but 8 to 10 laps. I didn't look at the exact details. I just looked at our notes where we were going, oh my God, the Haas are rockets. And they just carved their way through. And they were 1 and 2. And we were like, if the the F1 gods have got any heart here, they will just sprinkle a bit more rain because it's starting to dry. And if it dries, the Haas boys are in trouble.
And it dried. And they were done. They had to pit for inters, and then they had to pit again for slicks. I don't think they finished anywhere near the top.
11th and 12th,
Lando,
I think.
George.
They didn't. Yeah, Max, Lando, George. Yeah, a Max win, but again, Lando, George should have won it. If you remember, he made a couple of mistakes in that race. But now we're starting to eke towards. We've just had Monaco, which qualifying can throw up anything. But Max was down in 6th. Yes, Max won here, but other drivers should have won. We're now not seeing the name Checo on the podium anymore, and the other teams are starting to get a little bit kind of feisty.
Agreed. And in quali, to your point on George, they had the identical pole position time, which doesn't happen all that often. It does, and whoever gets it first gets the top position, unless there's a 3-way tie like Jerez in '97 with Also, friend of the show, Jacques Villeneuve, if you remember this soundbite.
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
So in addition to that, with a three-way tie, yes, whoever sets it first gets it first. So George, we started to see, in my humble opinion, a lot of maturation. He made a lot of mistakes in Canada, could have won. But we'll see him throughout the season kind of mature and grow and get away from the guy in Singapore 23 who thought he had a chance for it, sent it into the wall when he was third. I enjoyed watching George mature. I'm not a huge Russell fan, so it was nice to see it. But that was the beginning in my mind.
And then talking of Mercedes on a bit of a resurgence, we had Spain again, bit of a forgettable race. Didn't find too much about it. Maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe you remember something, Brian. But Lewis got on the podium, and that made it 18 straight years that he stood on the podium in F1, which is quite a stat.
I actually don't remember much of this race because I watched it having been awake for 36 hours in a row at a pub in Zurich.
Oh, of course. Yeah, this was part of the SAP European adventure.
Yeah, I was pounding pints of beer and soda alternately because I needed the caffeine to stay awake. I was so tired.
Well, then we moved on to Austria, where really it was a pretty decent race, but all we can really remember it for was that collision between Max and Lando, where Lando was chasing him down. He's going to get him, but he had a couple of nibbles where it's like, Lando, you need to wait until this is a real easy pass and nothing stupid, because Max looks like he's got not just his elbows out, but he's got elbow pads and elbow pads on top of those. Yeah, like exactly. The Aston Martin dagger from James Bond that came out.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, he didn't. He went for it at a point maybe you can say he shouldn't have, sent it too hard. Max pushed, they came together, off they went. Max recovered, Lando didn't. And a certain George Russell went, hello, boys. I'll have me a bit of this. Just came storming through.
Yeah, so, right place, right time. And then
it was probably... I was going to say, that then probably lit the touch paper of McLaren do look like they've got some pace here to challenge Max. This isn't like a one-off race. This isn't like a Singapore from the other year where it's the one track on the calendar where the Red Bull doesn't work. It actually, genuinely, now we're getting towards the halfway mark where it's like, hang on a minute, this could be turning into something.
And it was around this time where we kept hearing more news that Newey was leaving if he hadn't left already. It was around this time where the RB20, which is clearly not as dominant over the other teams as the RB19, even though it is faster season over season. And so maybe one of those advantages in the Red Bull quiver, one of those arrows, had been lost around this time. So we close out this first half, again, not summer break, but first 12 races. Max 255. Oh, I forgot about
you got one race.
I started saying it.
Yeah. You did.
I was there.
I know you were. That's why I was waiting for you to sort of lead us into that one, because you were actually there.
So I saw Lewis's dad in the paddock. I did not say hello. I didn't want to bother him, but it was foreshadowing that I saw the winner's father on that Friday.
It's all he owes you.
I see you. Your son's gonna win. It didn't bother him. I bothered other people, but not him. I even gave a heads up. Oh God, now I can't forget the RB team principal Laurent Mekies as he walked by.
It's also Jackie Stewart as well.
Well, I'm about to say that. I shook hands with Sir Jackie Stewart and met his wife Helen. And it was the coolest thing in the world. Obviously, all due to Paul, Pit Lane Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. It was awesome. And my wife's still disappointed, though. She didn't see Brad Pitt. The Apex GP was all set up. No Brad Pitt. We'll live. But yes, Lewis won. Wet track. It dried. So many teams made different calls. McLaren hosed up their strategy, in my humble opinion.
Did.
We'd see that a lot this season where it wasn't quite as perfect as it could have been. And... yes, Lewis winning was epically amazing. One of Rob's favorite stats. It broke a streak no one had ever won after their 300th Grand Prix. That was broken. Obviously, for him to win in Great Britain was amazing.
And it was another one where I held my breath for like the last 10 laps, because if you remember,
Max
Lando came out and was on the mediums. Sorry, was on the softs, and he wanted to be on the mediums because the other two guys were on the mediums. They seemed to be the faster. He'd have softs that would probably last, but probably not until the end of the race to give him the pace. So he went after Lewis and started to catch him, and then his softs started to fade. Max came past Lando and took him, and then Max was just trying to chase Lewis down. I was like, oh my God, he's going to get him. Oh my God, he's going to get him. Or Lewis is going to do something stupid. I mean, oh, what a finish. Loved it.
And this was, for me, the moment when Max became the Terminator. He may not have the fastest car anymore, and this was the flip, but he's like, yeah, just because my car isn't fast doesn't mean I can't drag it around right behind you. And he would start this run of wins and or seconds or just great position returns.
Yeah, or
on
just
points.
decent points.
Exactly.
Or just decent. If people were starting to say that Checo's form was really where the car really was, which it probably wasn't, it was probably below the actual form. But the actual form of that car was probably somewhere between the two. So therefore, Max, like you say, was probably from this point on is starting to maybe overachieve in a car, which is the sign of a champion. Which, as we get towards the end, that will play out big time. So yeah, we close out the first half from a race count perspective with Max on 255. Oh, Checo's not in second anymore. It's Lando with 156. It's okay. Charles must be third. Checo must be third. No, it's Charles with 150, and then it's Carlos with 146, and to round out the top five, it's Oscar with 124. So in the space of 6 races, Checo doesn't even feature in the top 5 anymore after being second after the first 6. Max is still top, so that's a consistent. Red Bull now 373, but Ferrari 302 and McLaren 295. So Checo's lack of point scoring is already starting to hurt at this point.
Yep.
We get the Mercs in 221, Aston Martin 68. Toro Rosso started picking up a few, as of Haas. So we've got 31 and 27 there. Alpine had notched a couple. Williams had finally got some points. And Sauber was stuck on 0. And then we went into the second half, numerically speaking, off to Hungary, which was a decent race-ish, but was kind of shrouded with the longest set of team orders in the history of the sport.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on here, so we won't belabor it. But Will Joseph, Lando's engineer, just kept going on and on and on, trying to convince him he needed to give the position back. Can I say this for the 900th time? They boxed Lando ahead of Oscar when Oscar was leading the race. You normally don't give the second driver preference on pit stop order, but they did it to fend off a charging Lewis, and they were afraid of an undercut. So I still think to this day they should have been clear. We're boxing you first, but if you come out ahead of Oscar after his pit, you have to give it back, because they didn't want to risk a double stack during the race. So they didn't say any of that. Lando took off first, went off, as we've said a lot about the McLaren, loves clean air, goes off down the track, and now he's well ahead of Oscar, and Lando is just not understanding, in my uneducated fan opinion, that he was only in first because of this. Yes, he pulled away. Yes, we could say Oscar should have caught him, but as we've said a bazillion times, that car loves clean air, and we started hearing this.
Just remember, every single Sunday morning meeting we have.
And then we got a little bit of this.
Spirals.
And then we got, a little bit of that and a little bit of this, one of these.
I promise, I'm trying to protect you.
And like you say, it was like 10 laps of pleading.
And the stupid thing was, Lando was genuinely quicker than Oscar. I still, again, I'll mirror your uneducated view here of, why did he just hand the place straight back and then overtake him? If he was faster than him, just chase him down and overtake him. But by drawing it out until almost the last lap or whenever it was, he was never going to go and be out. That was it. He just kind of surrendered and gave the victory to Oscar. And then it just left a bitter taste in it was just poorly executed.
Agreed.
Talking of poorly executing things, making sure your car is going to be finishing the race in a legal weight is something that Mercedes maybe can be accused of poorly executing, because poor old George pulled off an amazing one-stop strategy that nobody saw coming. We kept saying, he's got to pit, he's got to pit. No way, he's going to take this to the end. Those tyres must be now as thin as cigarette paper. I mean, there's nothing left of these things. And he does it. He nails it. He wins. It's fantastic. George is elated. We're all happy for him. He's done an amazing drive. And then he gets on the weighing scales. Well, with his car as well, not just George, but...
You named that episode, Don't Go Weigh in My Car. And yes. I often laugh about that. Like, I walk around randomly. Like, this week I was up at the office in Madison, and I'm going to a meeting, and I'm literally walking down the hallway going, don't go weigh in my car. I don't know why. It just sticks in my head. That was one of your best naming conventions ever.
So, yeah, George gets disqualified. Lewis inherits the win.
Don't go weigh in my car. Sorry.
Charles then gets dragged forward into third place on the podium, and it would be his first podium since he won in Monaco, because we were joking on the pod that he must have sold his soul to the devil to get his Monaco win, because after that, nothing. Nothing.
He didn't show up. He must have been, that was a bad hangover he had after that. He just kept showing up like, is it so bright out here? I can't race today.
Then, if you wanted, Brian, to really show your main rival that you've got him for pace, do you think the best place to do it would be go to his home Grand Prix and then beat him by the type of delta that he's been dominating the rest of the field with?
And use his catchphrase on the radio and go, that was simply lovely. That's what Lando did. That's what Lando and Lollipop Man had a field day with that. Simply Lovely, and like Lando taking over the domination kit from him. But yeah, Logan's last adventure at Zandvoort was his last race. Lando won by 22.8 seconds over Max, over Charles. And then we went from there. And again, we did summer break in between before that. And then we went to Monza. And I love Monza. I love it is a temple of speed, and I know the Ascari chicane and the history of it, and it's a hard corner in the first chicane, and you could talk about all of the corners. I don't want to say it's a simpler track, but it's a simpler track. It is how accurate and precise and how courageous can you be going into those the chicanes.
And how fast can you do it?
Yeah, and I love watching it. I love it.
So we had Colapinto turn up after Logan had got binned off. I'm just going to put this here. I mean, we probably could summarize it at the end, but I just want to pop a little thought in your brain now, Brian. We can maybe pick it up later. Did Colapinto peak too early in his first couple of races and then massively fall off a cliff?
Yes.
We'll come back to that.
The answer is yes. He was a rising star. Everyone wanted him. By the end, when he was actually, I'm assuming, negotiating with people, he was Crashapinto and not quite as dominating. And he's still talking to somebody. He's in the paddock right now in Abu Dhabi, still chatting with people.
Yeah, exactly. So we had Colapinto finished 12th on his debut. Ferrari won after he went onto the hard tyres, and he was giving his team huge amounts of grief, if you remember, Brian, for the hards that he was on. It was like, why am I on these tyres? And then worked like an absolute dream. He beat Oscar and Lando to win in Monza, and K-Mag picked up his 12th penalty point of the season for a collision with Gasly, so he would miss Baku. Anything else you remember on Monza before we rock over to Baku?
No, sir.
Oh, I love Baku.
I do too.
It was an amazing race this year.
We both have loved it for a long time, and we've done the pod 3 years now, and it felt like the first 2 years it never delivered what we wanted.
No, in the first 2 years, I think, and I might be wrong here, so people can correct me because I haven't listened to fact check myself. I think that I didn't like Baku the first 2 years because the DRS, it was just breezed by, awful overtakes. And I thought this year it seemed to deliver yes, you still get the DRS overtakes, but it seemed to deliver them more into the first corner. I think they changed it. And we had a great come forward. This was a rip roarer of a race with people challenging for it. And if you remember, Sainz and Perez were on like an absolute mission for who's going to finish third. And then they came to an arrangement where neither of them would because they decided to take each other out on the penultimate lap.
Exactly, on the penultimate lap. I would just like to highlight, again, you can never point at one particular thing, but Carlos finished 5th in the Drivers' Championship on 290. Oscar Piastri finished 4th, 292. You're telling me if Carlos finishes that race, he doesn't finish 4th?
Yeah.
And again, it's a sliding doors. Who knows what happens after that? But yeah, that was wild, that crash at the end. And it's one of those, it's rare when you actually go back to a crash and you go back to the middle. Like I watched it and I blamed Checo, and I think I sat here and I blamed Checo. And then I watched it again later. I'm like, oh, maybe not. And then you watch it later, you're like, I think that's just a racing incident. They came together going for the same racing line anyway.
Yeah. So I think that safety car neutralized. We finished under safety car, didn't we? And Oscar won it from Charles and then George. And this became a pivot point, the result. When Oscar won in this, it was the first time since Miami in 2022 that Red Bull were not top of the Constructors' Championship, and the first time McLaren had led it since Australia 2014.
And I know you said this, but again, when you talk about highlights for a driver, that was probably my Oscar highlight. The way he held off Charles in a really technically difficult high-speed track. To have a charging Charles Leclerc behind you for lap after lap after lap, and coming down into turn one, you got to put your car exactly right so they don't get ahead of you,
or you outbrake yourself and end up into that runoff. It was just
a masterful drive from Oscar, and I think everyone realized at that point he's not only really good, he's a potential future champion. If you didn't already think that.
Yep, and Colapinto and Albon both got points, and the future was looking bright for Colapinto at the Williams team.
It was all
and Williams. Just
we'll
wait,
hose that up.
And then to round out this third quarter of the season, we went to Singapore. We had all the usual Godzilla sightings in practice and quali. And did we call this the Singer Snore or the Singer Bore? I got a funny feeling we didn't like this one.
I can only remember "Don't Go Away" in my car. So.
We had Lando from Max from Oscar, and it's the one where Danny Rick got asked to go and do the fastest lap as part of his parting gift to Toro Rosso, even though we didn't know he was leaving, but we did. But they didn't let him have a proper send-off.
And then then everyone is arguing, should a sister team exist if you can go take a point off somebody else by sending your sister team driver out who's not in the points on some soft tires just to take the thing. So yep, we close out the third quarter. Max 331, Lando 279, Charles 245, Oscar 237, Carlos, we talked about where he'll end up finishing, 190. So Carlos goes on a charge because he gets right up snuggled behind Oscar. And then constructor, you already nailed it, right? McLaren 516, Red Bull 475. So, would they be able to hold on? Would they be able to fend off Max? Would Checo come alive? No one was really talking about Ferrari a lot at this point, but they were sneaking up there at 441.
Yeah, looking at this now, like we were all really thinking, can Red Bull get it back from McLaren? Can McLaren hold on? Is this a flash in the pan? Can they see the season out and take the title? None of us are looking at Ferrari going and even dreaming that Red Bull would finish third.
Yeah, Fred Vasseur back there going, ho, 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 just you wait. Sorry, French fans, sorry.
Then we have Mercedes 329, Aston Martin really making their witness protection in the middle of the constructors their own with 86, Toro Rosso 34.
Right in the middle, nobody cares.
Toro Rosso and Haas were having a nice little ding-dong of where they were going to with 34 and 31. Williams 16, Alpine 13, and Sauber with 0.
Alpine 9th with 13 at this point. 9th.
Yes, 9.
Just you wait. Oh, then we kind of get to some of the North American leg. We get to Coda, the first Ferrari 1-2 since 2002. Charles in front of Carlos. Did I get that wrong? I'm trying to remember.
No. Charles beat Carlos. We had Lando again and Max. It was kind of the revisit of Austria as those two ding-dong there, but this time Lando was the one that got the penalty. I can't remember the exact move, but I remember agreeing that the penalty was probably right. So he got the 5-second time was going to be added to his race time, I believe. So he went on a charge and managed to get 4.1 seconds ahead of Max by the line. So lost his place and went down to 4th.
We actually one of the Dirty Siders, Coach Mike, sent a video of that battle where he was sitting. Yes. He had a great view of it. So, Mike, thanks for sending that to us. That was really cool. And then we went to Mexico. Drama at the start, carnage. Max got tons of penalties. Oh, Sergio. Finished last after a tangle with Lawson. Liam Lawson has no problem making enemies of all the current drivers, does he?
No, it was, but yeah, I can't remember now. Wasn't even that long ago. Did we enjoy Mexico more than we had for a number of years, or was it another snooze fest?
It was a snooze. It wasn't great, but it was better than the last couple of years.
That's right. A bit better than we kind of said. Maybe
but it's
Mexico's
a low bar.
On the way back up.
When the bar is literally sitting on the ground, can you step over it? Yes, you can.
Then we went to one of our favorite tracks, Brazil. It was wet. We had lots of, we had something like 3,000 red flags across the weekend. It was insane. We got to the race with that weird start line incident where they had to go round again. Because was this where Stroll had beached himself, or did that come later? Stroll drove onto the gravel for no reason. Right. We also had the start point where they were supposed to stay where they were because it was an aborted start, but half of them didn't realise. So Lando led them off round, or half of them round, and everyone's like, what the hell's going on?
And then Mercedes is changing tire pressures on the grid, and everyone just ends up getting a fine. They're like, oh, that'll be $2,000, please. Like, what? All right. But yeah, you nailed it. Then Lance went into the gravel. He's like, I could go through the wet gravel where it's been raining for 2 weeks in a row, or I could go around on the concrete. He's like, yeah, gravel. Gravel sounds good.
Put my Aston Martin into 4x4 and let's do this.
Pool or pond? Pond for you. Yeah, that was a mess. But Max, it has to say, probably one of the best drives we saw from a driver in 24.
Yeah,
maybe with Oscar's defense at Baku. But this, I'd put Max, for me, best drive of the season, one of the best of his career. He is the Terminator. He does not take no for an answer, and he does not relent, and I love that about him.
And this was the weekend that was the absolute tipping point of the championship. If you wanted the driver's title to go all the way to the wire, you needed Lando to capitalize on pole and Max to be languishing down at the end and getting caught up in midfield battles. And the polar opposite happened. Max went on an absolute charge. Yeah, there was some maybe bits of racing luck. Nobody's fault, but just safety cars, track conditions, all that kind of things just fell the way, and Max absolutely capitalized, won the race. ahead of a double Alpine podium.
Double Alpine. I hope Esteban took extra pictures because it would turn out he wasn't around much longer in retrospect. Then we go to Qatar, and it was a boring race.
We go to Vegas.
Oh, Vegas. I'm sorry. Thank you, man. That's my second mistake. We go to Vegas. Again, another banger of a race out of Vegas. 2 years,
Yes.
2 for 2. Yeah. Max becomes champ, which was amazing. A Merc 1-2 with George winning, Ferrari 3-4, and Max, our champion in a cold Las Vegas race. And the Mercedes, throughout this entire North American stint and American stint, had been so confusing. Good here, bad there, weird stuff happening. And they go to Vegas, and out of nowhere, Mercedes like, oh, yeah, we're apparently really good in the cold.
Yeah, who knew?
They didn't.
Absolutely. And then you always use the analogy of the romantic departure at the train station, and then she drops one. But Qatar and Abu Dhabi are not the best places to finish the season on. So the most exciting thing that happened in Qatar was a wing mirror fell off and didn't cause a red flag for a very long time until Valtteri drove over it, and then it did cause one because of all the punctures. Max won it while we desperately tried to find something to review about that race because it was boring. And we thought, okay, well, we'll go to Abu Dhabi where things will get better because we'll have a constructors title on the fight between McLaren and Ferrari. But the racing gods were not on anyone's side here. Ferrari had to change Charles's power unit or battery or something, so he got a 10-place grid penalty. Everything that could go wrong to deny us a fight to the wire did go wrong. And
Max tried. He took out Oscar on the first lap. He's like, let's at least make this interesting. But Lando just said, see you later, alligator, and he took off.
Yeah, hats off Lando.
Great drive.
He won, and it was amazing watching it. As much as I'm a Ferrari fan, just seeing McLaren be the Constructors Champions after all this time was just brilliant. Because, I've always said, like, my early dabblings in F1 is kind of Mansell, but it's Senna in that McLaren. It was just, it was great to see them back at the top again. So we rounded out the season with Max the champion on 437, much bigger than it looked like it was going to be to Lando on 374. Charles in 356. He'd had a shot at coming second, but just couldn't take it to Lando at all in that final race. Oscar back on 292, like you already said, on Carlos 290. McLaren waltz off with the devil's number 666 to win the championship. Maybe they sold their soul.
They went to the Charles Leclerc, how do I sell my soul to the devil to win the race or thing I want? And they did it.
Yeah. Ferrari second, Red Bull third, Merc fourth, Aston Martin in the tumbleweed in the middle, Alpine. Last update we gave after
ninth.
They were ninth on 13. We end the season on 65 points ahead of Haas on 58, place. Toro Rosso 46, Williams on 17, and thankfully not a pointless season for Sauber because Zhou, we forgot to say it, but Zhou got 4 points somewhere. It was in one of those last few races. Was it Qatar?
Yes, Qatar. Yep.
Because Valtteri could have and it just didn't. Yeah,
and then Lando took 10th off him after his penalty. Yep.
That's right. So
All right.
That was the season that was. So
I gotta say,
to you, Mike.
We'll do some stats real fast, but that was one of my favorite seasons in a long time.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely brilliant. And if that does, do you know what? Even if next season isn't better, but it's the same, I will absolutely lap that up because I don't think if we can start next season on the same form that we ended this season, say the second half, so we don't get the 5-star head start for Red Bull, specifically Max, then I'm saying the Drivers' Championship is any one of 5 drivers.
Yeah.
Potentially, I'm thinking. The 2 Ferrari guys. You have Lewis over there and Charles, yeah?
Yes.
You've got, obviously, the 2 McLaren boys.
Yes.
Max. Maybe we throw in George as well. Maybe 6.
I was going to say, I wouldn't count George out in that Mercedes. Yeah. I think you may have 6
people. The problem is,
if
they still have the gnat farting syndrome where the car can do anything, that might hamper him. So
maybe they'll figure it out this offseason. But let's talk about some of the stats. And since it's for the full season, we'll use Slaphouse to get us started. SAP Stats, the whole darn Season 24 edition. We'll do this with some highlights, of course. First of all, qualifying head-to-heads. A good way to look teammate to teammate comparison, see in the same car who is better. And would you be surprised if I told you, Rob, that Max Verstappen was the most dominating over his teammate with 23 out of 24 qualifying wins?
Shock horror. It's shock horror that Checo actually out-qualified him once.
I can't remember where that was or what happened. Was Max there that day? Did he forget his boots? Was he in the car in flip-flops? I don't understand how that happened. Valtteri and Alex tied for second with 21 qualifying victories against their teammates, and in Alex's case, the varied teammates he raced against. Lando, 20 out-qualifying Oscar. That was probably the one surprise to me in the entire head-to-head, that Oscar only out-qualified Lando 4 times. That was surprising. Lando really did become kind of a Mr. Saturday this season, where you could count on him to put in some really special laps. He had some mistakes, too, but he had some pretty good laps. And then we'll close out just the top here and highlight a couple notes. George out-qualified Lewis 19-5.
Yeah, that's a big turnaround. I mean, Lewis has always been renowned for his qualifying. I mean, wow.
Very big turnaround. And then Fernando out-qualified Stroll 19-5. Not a surprise in the least, in my humble opinion. But the thing that everyone talked about was when Liam came back and took Danny Rick's seat, what would happen? Where would we see Yuki and Liam? And Yuki out-qualified Liam 6-0. Yet everyone says Liam is the leader in the clubhouse for the Red Bull seat that Checo currently has. I don't get that.
No,
yeah,
I don't.
We've quietly become pretty big Yuki fans, I think, over there.
I know. And I think the closest partnership on the table was the Alpine boys, right? Have I got that right? Is that 11-13? 11-13 to Esti. Esti bested him.
Yes, he did. So McLaren wins the Constructors Championship for the first time since 98. That stat's been used a bunch. But the thing that I found interesting, it was the first non-Red Bull or non-Mercedes since Braun in 2009. That's the last non-Red Bull or Mercedes to win. So it's been a while of domination from two teams. And I think we might be talking about Braun a little later, so hold on for that. The 26 years between championships for McLaren is a record interval for a constructor, which I guess is a nice way of saying for a team that's been around a long time, they've really not won in a while.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the next one up that you would suspect would be Williams, right? Like, if they can turn it around, they'll probably have a bigger gap than 26 years.
Exactly. So McLaren was last champions, as we said, 26 years ago, 13 days, and when they were taken out by Ferrari, 13 days before Lando was born in 99. And then in the last race, I found this. We didn't get a chance to do this for Abu Dhabi. Yas Marina, they put like $14 trillion to build this whole thing out. The race, the circuit, Ferrari World, which you can see it's that huge Ferrari thing on the building next to it that you often see. Yet Ferrari's never won in 16 visits to Yas Marina.
Wow.
Yeah, they got to get on that.
Yeah.
Max winning is now the 5th driver. I think I have that right. Oh, no, sorry. It makes him the 6th person to ever win 4 titles. There were 5 prior. Prost, Vettel, Fangio, Schumacher, and Hamilton, and now Max Verstappen with 4+ titles, I should phrase it. Max had 8 pole positions this year. He had 7 consecutive poles. So again, back to the point on Red Bull's domination early. He had 7 consecutive poles to open the season. He had 8 total. This stat has been done about 100 different times, so I'll just hit the highlight. Max scored 74.2% of Red Bull's constructor points. That's basically 3/4 of the points. That's crazy to have that many more than your teammate.
And I think I saw a stat, and I'm going to butcher this, but I think the gap between Max and Sergio is greater than the gap between all other teammates added together.
I believe that. I mean, it's 437 to 152.
I think it was something like, I think it was something like 238 plays 237 or something. So like if you take the gap between all the other partnerships across the grid and add them up together, you still don't have a number as big as how much Max dominated Checo. That's just insane.
That is insane. Oscar, who we've talked a lot about, ran every lap. The 4th time that's ever happened. Max in 23 last year, his car was both dominant and reliable. Lewis in 19, and Schumi in 2002 for Ferrari. And I promised one stupid stat before I close out with some real ones. The T-cam where the camera is right in front of the air intake above the driver's head, they're either black or yellow. And it's listed based on how the team submits their forms to the FIA before the season. And so Team Black 14:22, Team Yellow 12:37. The black team won because mainly Max's TCAM is black and Checo's is yellow. Leclerc's is black, Sainz is yellow, 356-290. Russell outpointed Hamilton. His TCAM is black, yellow. Hamilton's is yellow, which matches his helmet, by the way, which is pretty cool. But Lando bringing it in for Team Yellow TCAM on the Papaya car, 374 was a big help. Alonso yellow, Sonoda yellow, and then Hulkenberg yellow. So there you go. The black TCAM was better because more often than not, it's the first person. It is the first person listed. More often than not, it is the number one driver, but not every team does it that way. Was that a good useless stat?
Fantastic. One of my favorite useless
Sean
stats you've
Kelly
ever
right
done.
now is throwing things at his phone. He's like, don't ever use something like that again. Because I'm sure
He's
he
not. He's
listens
just
to
jealous
this
he
part.
didn't use it first.
Exactly. Drivers of the day. Lando had a run of these early where he had a ton of drivers of the day. 7 times the driver of the day. Don't get me started on what that means for fantasy points. It's stupid. But anyway, 7 times driver of the day. Charles, 5 times driver of the day. And a lot of those were for the races he won that were emotional and exciting, which were deserved. Carlos and Lewis tied 3 times driver of the day, 2 times for Oscar, and now we're down to people who only won driver of the day once. And I haven't mentioned world champion Max Verstappen, which is the reason I brought this stat up.
We gave him more King of the Pits awards than
Yes.
the fans gave him driver of the day.
Totally. And the thing that I find fascinating, 4 people won driver of the day one time. And it's Max, again, a generational talent, a Mount Rushmore guy, and Ollie Behrman, Daniel Ricciardo, and Joe Guan Yu. One of these not like the other.
Oh, my gosh.
And then finally, my last stat for the season. The first 12 races, the way that Rob kind of carved up for us the quarters, the first 12 races, the first half, Max, 255 points ahead of Lando, 171. We already hit this stat. However, if you look only at the second half, those last 12, Charles won the second half, 206. I did not know that.
I would have said that it was Lando, Charles, Max. I knew Max was probably third in that, but I would never have thought that Charles had outscored Lando. It's because the calendar, when we say second half, isn't really half a season. I think you kind of forget.
Right,
So
the summer break is late.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
And those were the SAP stats I wanted to hit.
awesome. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Dirty Side Awards. We have a number of votes that we put out online to get everybody to vote for the categories. We put forward the nominations. I did some Google searching for each of these categories. I kind of looked at the things that came back on the first page of Google, then maybe put my own thing on it, and we put them out, and you voted in your droves, and we will announce those. Then we had one that we did with over on Threads, in the F1 Threads community, where we asked them to put forward their funniest moments of the season and then put it out for a poll for them to vote. And then finally, myself and Brian will award our overall Dirty Side, You're the Pits, and King of the Pits award.
Can I play us in with a games show theme to get this started?
Of course you can, my friend.
Dirty Side of the Track, 24 awards.
Do you think our awards music should have been a bit more grand?
I mean, we could go totally different, something like this, if we wanted to highlight Checo a lot more. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. He's not going to come on the show now, is he?
No, he's not. We'll take it in turns of introducing the nominees and doing the winners. We'll flip flop each way. So I'll kick us off. I'll introduce the nominees for this one, and you can do the winner, Brian. So it was most memorable moment of the season. For all of these, we had 4 nominations. We had Lando's first win, the double Alpine podium in Brazil, Charles winning in Monaco, or Lewis winning at Silverstone.
And the winner is Charles win in Monaco. 40% of the votes.
Yeah, I honestly thought Lewis winning at Silverstone was going to walk this.
Yeah, but you're British. You got British bias. You like the media. Max always points out.
Oh, ouch. I just thought it was like, he broke that 300 stat. Everyone thought he was done. He's never going to win again.
I saw his dad on Friday in the paddock. I know.
Exactly. I know. Okay, next one, Brian. Do you want to give us the
All right,
the nominees?
the most controversial moment of the season. And the nominees are Logan kicked out of his car for Alex to drive it because they didn't have any more chassis because all the parts were managed in Excel. Max and Lando, the ding-dong battle in Austria that they took themselves out and George drove through for the win. Alpine replacing Esti Besti for the last race when he was clearly ready to go race it with his new helmet. or McLaren's attempt at team orders in Hungary, which we've already talked about. Rob, who won?
I don't know if this is loser, but it's the winner in inverted commas with 37% of the votes was McLaren's team orders in Hungary. Again, didn't think that one was going to take it. I thought the Max and Lando in Austria was nailed on for the most controversial moment. So then we come to one which maybe we both saw coming, and I was a little surprised at how much it did. So biggest disappointer of the season. The nominees were Checo. That's it. Not even going to say anything else there. Sauber, performance and pit stops, especially at the beginning of the season. The fact the driver's title was settled early and we didn't get it go to the wire. Or Danny Rick not getting a proper send-off. So
and I'm going to actually let Bruce Buffer answer this one.
Sergio Checo Perez!
And it's worth noting he had over 50% of the vote. So
I know. The most one-sided one we had, I think, out of all of these.
Yes. Best race. And again, an epic season. An epic season. Friend of the show, Rob Reed, has written a lot for Forbes about what a great season this has been. So Rob, totally agree. We'll get you on here soon to talk about it. But what was the best race? The nominees are Silverstone. Lewis wins with all-around great racing. Brazil, Max's masterclass in the rain. We've talked about both of these. Canada, the wet race with close racing throughout. We talked about that. And then Spa, where the top three were covered by just 1.173 seconds. And if I'm remembering right, 4 and 5 came around the corner in camera shot and were about 3 seconds behind those drivers. Yep. Rob, who won?
This was almighty close. The closest one we had so far. So I'm going to give the honourable mention. So Lewis winning at Silverstone was 32.8, so nearly 33%.
Imagine that. You can't let that one go.
39%, 38.8. Masterclass from Max in Brazil. I think that's well-deserved because, like we just said, that was probably race of the season, performance of the season from him. So I'm glad that one won. That is... It was a cracking race, and absolutely, I always love Brazil. So I would have been happy with either of those two winning because I love Silverstone, love Brazil. So
I loved all of them. All four were great in my mind.
Yeah, true. Okay. Was it me to read out the nominations now? Yes.
Yes, that's how this has been working.
And ironically, this one's biggest screw-up of the season is I just messed up the order of what we're doing.
And I get to say what it is because I'm a screw-up.
So biggest screw-up of the season. George being underweight in Spa and getting disqualified. Sauber and their wheel guns. That's 34-second pit stops. Stroll just driving into the gravel in Brazil for no reason whatsoever. Haas sending both their drivers out with illegal wings and getting them both disqualified from Monaco quali. Asterix, small print, and ruining Brian's fantasy that weekend.
Survey says, if we look at second place, I do want to highlight the runner-up too. Stroll, with 27% of the vote, was a clear second. But our largest winner so far, the biggest screw-up of the season, is George being underweight in Spa and getting disqualified and losing the race after his masterclass of being tire whisperer and get it to the end, 55% of the vote. And a phrase we like on the dirty side when people like to discuss and debate and argue and we think it's a nothing burger. Well, what's the nothing burger of the year? The nominees are, and these are all great. So Rob came up with these four here. These are all perfect nothing burgers. The McLaren FlexiWing situation, the Red Bull secret front bib adjuster, the Red Bull magic braking system, or Mercedes and Ferrari skid block protector.
Ooh, I wish we could debate these more. But the biggest nothing burger. Well, again, I'm going to do the first and second because they're close. 34.3% Red Bull's front bib adjuster. And then 35.8 the McLaren FlexiWing DRS thing. So that was the biggest nothing burger of the season. It was probably right. They probably did generate clickbait in that order as well. So, right, biggest surprise of the season. And result of this one shocked me, actually. So, biggest surprise of the season. Lewis going to Ferrari, having 7 different race winners, McLaren champions and with Red Bull only third, or Newey to Aston Martin. What do we have, Brian?
Well, fascinatingly, as you say, there was very, 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 very little vote for Newey to Aston Martin, which for me was a big surprise. But that's okay, because I didn't think he was ever going to Aston Martin until the very end. I was sure he was going to Ferrari. I mean,
Same here.
Yeah. Anyhow, that's fine. In second place, 28% of the vote, Lewis to Ferrari. and 45% of the vote having 7 different race winners, which was, again, a huge surprise. So a great vote, totally agree. I was surprised by maybe the ratios, but after last season's domination, I loved it.
I thought Lewis was going to walk this, the Ferrari story, because it broke.
It
was the
happened
first
so early
silly
in the
season
season.
before.
I think we got used to it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of the ones that we put out. So thank you so much for all the people that voted. It was a lot of fun.
Can we tell this for the Dirty Siders right here? Thank you all who voted.
Might have to dabble in some Google Forms again in the future because it was quite fun doing that and watching the votes come in as well. So, then we went over to Threads and we asked them, okay, dear F1 Threads community, pull together your list of funniest things that you saw throughout the year. We didn't suggest anything. This was all generated by those guys, and then we put it together in one more vote and had it go through. So, nominees. And I missed this one, and we didn't mention it in Qatar, but I went back and checked it, and I saw the interview. Yuki always believed when the mirror was lying on the floor that his engineer was telling him there was a beaver on the track. And he wondered how beavers had made it to Qatar.
I saw
because he was mishearing beaver for mirror. I mean,
I saw that after as well. I laughed so hard, and the Twitter memes. While I had a crazy week, very late at night, I go on Twitter, and the beavers on the track.
And then we had Oscar's quest to get adopted by Charles. I think this all came about where he wanted to live in Monaco, and I think you can't just buy a house in Monaco. They're usually inherited, right? And he wanted Charles's mum to adopt him. And I think it went on a little bit of went beyond that, actually, that it was Oscar just wanting to get adopted by everybody so that he could live anywhere. So that was that one. We had the Lizards shenanigans in Singapore and the various team radios about Godzilla being back. Piastri's radio message from Abu Dhabi was Abu Dhabi?
Yes. Yeah.
Move of a world champion. Yeah,
I gotta
Max
go get
hit
that
him.
team radio. I haven't had a chance to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Ollie Behrman and his multiple side quests. Over the course of the season, he was F1 photographer, barber, social media admin, F1 driver, F2 driver.
I learned this from the Threads poll.
Yeah, I had to go back and look at it. Yeah, he was seen cutting drivers' hair, people's hair. Yeah, exactly. Then this one, I did see the video, which is fantastic. After everyone was getting done for swearing, Piastri was mock interviewing Lando in the cool-down room with a fresh air microphone that he was holding out, and they were showing a picture of Lando overtaking one of the Mercedes. He just turns around to him and says, "So, without using swear words, how did you feel in that moment?" And Lando, I think, probably wanted to swear. Then we had the comment. I love this one. I remember this one. I was watching this live. The commentary team commentating on the karting race going on in the background at Spa while we were under the red flag, and the helicopter cam was showing the karting track that was next to it, and they started doing the commentary for the karting one. This one, you got to love Red Bull social media admin. Red Bull tagging Mercedes, where there was a post put out saying, "Are you the villain in anyone's story?" And Red Bull with a response, "We are maybe in Mercedes 2021 season," which was
wild.
And then the last one was the beef between Max and George. Okie dokie. We had 68 responses over on Threads, which thank you so much for piling in and doing that one. Do you want to read out the winners there, Brian?
I'd be happy to. Let's see what came out of the machine. Number 1, and I'm going to do it in the reverse order, but I'm giving the answer first because it's awesome. Number 1 is Oscar's attempt to get adopted. Took home first place. I'm a little surprised by that. It was funny, but I appreciate everyone weighing in on that. But we had a tie for second. A tie, you say. It was George and Max's beef and the lizard shenanigans in Singapore.
I was a little sad.
All great answers.
All great. I was a little sad Yuki's beaver moment wasn't higher up the list, but maybe a lot of people like me had kind of missed it and had to go back and see it again. So it's kind of one of those things, if you weren't there and you didn't see it, then maybe you didn't find it as funny. So, yeah, thank you so much. So that concludes all of the awards that we put out there for you guys to vote in. So we're down to the last 2.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we haven't actually discussed how we're going to award these, so I think we're just going to argue in real time over them.
Sounds good. Why would we plan ahead when we can plan at the point of discussion? But first, let's start with our final 2 awards. We're going to start with the pits. The last time in 24, we get to hand out the pits.
You're the pits.
So, Rob, you had some nominees. Would you like to highlight who your nominees are?
Yes, my 2 nominees for You're the Pits to take home the coveted You're the Pits trophy. I'm going to put forward Sauber and Checo.
I agree wholeheartedly with those nominations. I'd like to add Esteban, who I thought had a forgetful season, so much so Alpine's like, you can leave now. And then I would add Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who
I was going to, but I decided to not go political.
Well, I'm not. I'm not political. He's the leader of F1, and he's an annoying guy who inserts himself in places he shouldn't be. But I mean, if I'm voting, I'm going Checo. That's where I would cast my vote. Where would you go, Rob?
I really kind of put Sauber in there to give me someone else to discuss with you rather than just fully beating on Checo, but I don't know that anybody else has been more deserving of the You're the Pits trophy. We must have awarded it. I should have gone back and counted who we've given out You're the Pits to and then done a tally. That would have been the correct way to do this, but we give it to Checo almost every week.
We should rename it the honorary Checo Perez You're the Pits Award at one point. But so the winner of the Pits... Yes, Checo. That's the way you have to say it. You can't have enthusiasm because, as you say, that's the loser. And now we turn to the final award of the 24 season, the last time we get to give out the King of the Pits.
You're the king of the pits.
All right. So, Rob, you had a couple early nominations. Do you want to put those forth?
Yeah, I was, there was cases to be made for Charles, Lando, lots of people, but I kind of sit back and kind of think, hang on a minute. I'm going to do a driver and a constructor, and then we can decide who we give it to or who nominations you have. Got to be Max for just, like you said, dragging that car around in the second half of the season. That's a sign of a champion, of not just kind of just being down in the dumps and going, oh, my car's not dominating anymore, I'm going to join Checo at the back. But being up the front and either getting wins or just putting his car in a position to bring home the bacon and win the title. Talking of winning titles, it's got to be McLaren as well, because that is an epic season to knock Red Bull off their perch. So those are my two nominations. What do you got?
So after you'd put that in the notes and I looked at them, like, obviously those are great. I did have sort of the honorable mention or third step of the podium in my mind. The fans, man, we had it good. This was a hell of a season, but
how can we win it by just having a good season? We've got to watch a season.
We can be king of the pits too, brother. You got to just think outside the box. And then I thought about other people as well, and we kind of highlighted, I feel, in all seriousness, George matured a bunch as a driver this season. And I still am not a huge George Russell fan, per se, but his driving got more consistent, less, sending it for things that didn't exist. Oscar with his look at me, I'm that good in Baku drive. Obviously, Lando, who learned throughout the season and what he could do. Charles, I still think can be a champion. You seem to disagree. There were so many of these drives. Alpine and Pierre for what he did at the end of the season. All of them could be worthy of a third conversation. But for me, you nailed it. It's either Max or it's McLaren, and I'd give it to Max.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to find it really difficult not to say that my vote's for McLaren because just first title in whatever it was, 26 years, and really taking it to Red Bull and the rest of the grid.
I think we can have a split winner. It's fine.
Well, do you know what? If I don't like split winners, I've taken my own medicine.
I
take my own medicine. I once gave you grief for saying we can't sit on the fence on this. So what I'm going to say it's going to pain me, but because McLaren screwed the pooch a couple of times on this season and didn't do good strategy calls where they probably could have helped deliver the title to Lando, I'm going to say that they'll learn from this. They'll come back next year and maybe we'll see a double title from the next year. But for this year, then, because he wasn't given the full equipment all season, I'll join you with Max.
Awesome. So where do I put my applause? A big congratulations for Max. Well, we'll do this instead.
We haven't got the champagne.
4 world titles and the dirty side season king of the pits. I mean, where does this guy go next? Maybe he could enter our fantasy league. See what I did there? That
could be your segue into it.
That was it. We got to talk fantasy. Last week we recorded right after Abu Dhabi finished, and we didn't have time to talk about the calculating points. But more importantly, we'll talk about the season because somebody's winning a T-shirt. So Abu Dhabi, we had Usama Phoenix AMG 358 points. Dang, Usama, that's a lot of points followed by Andy, Tails I Win, 290, Foot of Lead, Chuck, nice job, 271, tied with Rob, J Vale Incorporated, George's Sweaty Visor, third place tie. Rob, what did you do? Did you make a deal with the devil?
I was looking at my remaining chips and thinking, what the hell can I do here? And I used the no negative, which helped because I did have a couple of negative scorers, and obviously that did influence my points. So,
Well,
yeah.
Rakesh, good job by you, Rob. Good job, seriously. Rakesh, Professor's B Team, Yank the Mic, Mike, Fan Amp, Fantasy HQ, Adam, of course he would be up there. You and Mike are really good at this stuff. Daniel, La Secunda, Squadrera, I messed that up. Factory with Merck Stappen, and a 9th place tie with Matt, Shoey Transmitted Disease. Matt, thanks for not making me do another shoey and ruining another pair of shoes. Tied for 9th. I was, I had a problem. I ended the season like Abu Dhabi, like the lover you send away at a train station who farts. I was 47th, 154, 47th.
I nearly doubled your points out.
Yeah, I was really bad.
Not enough to catch you, though. Not enough to catch you.
Yeah,
I was
crushed the season. Crushed the season. So the headline of the season has to be that our champion of the overall season, Waystar Royko Busan, 5,474 points. Oh, not Chopper. Hold on, Busan, I meant this. Oh, boy, it's been
wanted to go up in the chopper to see the podium, right? You want to get a better
Correct.
camera angle. Yeah.
First half winner, Factory, Merck Stappen came in second. Yank the Mic. Great job, Mike, coming in third. You really came on throughout the season. Rakesh, Professor's B Team. San Gaucho F1 Manuel. Usama, who had that dominating close. Phoenix AMG, 6th. Adam, friend of the show, FanApp Fantasy HQ, 7th. Fariz, Patronus RT, 8th. Tails I Win, Andy Taylor, friend of the show, 9th. And then, again, Matt, Chewy Transmitted Disease, 10th. So I finished 20th this season, especially going out on that horrible move, with 5,031 points. Rob was right behind me in 23rd, although a couple hundred points behind.
A couple hundred is nothing. It's nothing. Like, you absolutely wiped the floor with me in the last 2 years, so this is kind of... I'm
true.
the McLaren on the resurgence here, and you're the Red Bull. Next year,
I
baby.
wiped the floor with myself. I was so bad. At least in the other league I'm in, Michael Cronje's league, where a lot of us nerds go play, Rob and Adam and Mike and Yank the Mic and Michael Cronje and so forth, Andy. I did all right there. I finished 9th. I had a much better team, and I put myself 7,000 out of 2.5 million.
Time out. So you put more effort into other leagues that are not the dirty side?
Nope.
Is that what you're saying?
I put more effort in. I took more chances, and some of them paid off. Do you ever put a team in? You're putting your team in. You're like, you know what? I'm going to put George in this week out of the blue, and then all of a sudden he wins. I did a couple of those, so I got pretty lucky.
Okay, I'll let you off.
Yeah. But a bad season for me in fantasy, as another friend of the show, Fantasy HQ Rob, would say. He's happy this season is over in fantasy. I am too. I did not do well. I'll do better than 7,000th. In the other league next time, or at least 25,000th as I was in the Dirty Side League, which was embarrassing. But that's the season.
It is the season. I do want to give a quick shout out. I should have printed out the leaderboard, but we need to try and get more people joining /F1, although I know he's changed his name now, actually, but on the Super Brew Predictor game where we predict pole position, fastest lap, and the top 10 in exact order every week.
Wow.
Last season, I got pipped on the last race of the season. I finished second. This year, I didn't fare as well. I was either 4th or 5th, but it's a fun league, but there's only ever about 10, 12 active players, so I think if it gets run again next year, we'll try and get more Dirty Siders on board because it's easy. The Super Brew app is nice and easy. It can send you email reminders so you don't even forget to put the prediction in. Nice little drop down. You just say who's going to get pole, who's going to get fastest lap, and then 1 through 10 off you go and you're done. It's a good bit of fun. So
awesome.
So yeah, that's that. Thank you, Brian, for all those stats and pulling all the SAP stats section together. It was another great season with you on the Dirty Side.
It was awesome. Thank you for putting the framework of the event together today and getting the votes. This was fun.
Yeah, it was. So we are going to do something we've not really done for the last couple of years. We're actually going to take a little bit of time off over Christmas. I'm heading back to the UK for 10 days, and I ain't lugging my laptop with me and my microphone to be able to record. So me and Brian are like, what are we going to do? So in classic Seinfeld 100th episode or any other show where they do the clip show version, we've both picked a Dirty Side favourite, going back right almost to the beginning of when...
Both of them.
Both of them are like right back early days when we didn't know what we were doing. We still don't, but at least now our microphones sound better. So apologies for the quality on what you're going to hear. But my
That's
pick,
the only change. 3 years later, you can hear us better.
that's it. We haven't got any better of what we do. You can just
No.
hear our ramblings a lot clearer.
Yes.
I've gone and picked one that I absolutely loved doing and being part of. We had Pit Lane Paul on one of the first times he came on, and he did probably actually a second appearance, and he did a full review of what it was like to be life on the inside of that epic 2009 Brawn season, from not even knowing if they were going to have enough funding to even go to the first race, to putting really nasty stickers on the cars to actually make it look like it was not just the Cool Runnings toboggan, to winning the whole thing. It's
a
just
great
a story and a half. And
Yeah,
it was
great
done
pick.
so early on when we only had basically our parents listening.
Yeah. Seriously,
that-
I mean, we started in December of 21, and this was February of 22. And Rob's right, our microphone stunk. But the content is fantastic. So stick with that one when that comes out, as Rob's choice. Paul is epic in it, and it's great. I re-listened to it. I've been in the car a lot recently, driving all over the place late at night, and I listened to that one. The one I chose is the Niki Lauda Vale's Tales. And Rob is, we take turns when we do the Vale's Tales, who kind of does the primary research versus secondary, and Rob's primary, and he nails it. It is one of my favorite episodes. I learned so much about Niki Lauda, both from Rob's notes and my notes and our discussion and your contributions on Twitter, where we had like 6 followers at the time, because again, it was February of 22. So seriously, both of these episodes are early birds. My microphone is terrible in the Lauda episode, but it's listenable. The content, though, is fantastic. So we will put these together as best of Dirty Sides. They will drop like normal on Sundays. We won't leave you hanging, Dirty Siders. We got your back. It's the off season. We're always here for you. We may just record these a little early.
And then we will be back live with some kind of content yet to be defined. Maybe we'll wake Pit Lane Paul out of his winter hibernation. But something will happen on that first weekend in January, where we will kick off 2025 with something.
And on that bombshell, it's time to end. Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening through 24. Thanks for this amazing season. I did nominate us, the fans, as King of the Pits this season because it has been a great year. Rob, thank you for a great year as well. I look forward to chatting with you as we put the best ofs together. I look forward to listening to those, and I hope everyone has a great week, a happy holidays, and a happy new year. Be well, everybody.